Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agana Timrandasya Gananjana Slakaya Chakshun Militanyena Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tatati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Yukta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Sri Rupam Sahagachatam Sagana Raganatavitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakavitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tatta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Stuti Devi Pranamai Hiripriye Manchakalpya Tirubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyeva Cha Patitanam Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So I have to ask everybody to forgive me because my voice isn't very good, so please bear with me and I'll do the best I can to speak clearly into the microphone. Maybe helps a little bit. So I've been instructed to continue reading from the introduction of Bhagavad-Gita at the bottom of page 28, I assume. Well, in my book it's page 28 in the blue volume here. The paragraph that starts with "in conclusion." Well, it's not a verse. We're finishing the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. Is that correct? Okay, good. I'm glad somebody is here to confirm it. Okay, so I will read this and we'll try to work our way through some of these. There's a whole list of verses here. And then we're going to discuss what Prabhupada is proposing, particularly in the last paragraph. So I guess I'll just read it and then we'll have some discussion. In conclusion, Bhagavad Gita is a transcendental literature which one should read very carefully. Gita Shastram idam purnyam yapatet prayata purnam. If one properly follows the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, one can be freed from all the miseries and anxieties of life. Everybody should note there that it says if one follows the instructions carefully. It doesn't say you can do it whimsically, it must be done carefully. Bhaya shokatad varjita. One will be freed from all fears in this life, and one's next life will be spiritual. Gita Mahatmya. We talked about fears the other day in the Bhagavatam class. There is also a further advantage. Gita Daryayana Sislasya Pranayama Parasya Cha Naivash Kandihi Papani Purva Janma Kritani Cha. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him. Again, from the Gita Mahatmya. Thank you. The Lord says very loudly in the last portion of Bhagavad Gita, 1866, probably one of the most quoted verses in the entire Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityajya Mamikam Saranam Vraja Ham Tam Sarva Papyebhyo Mokshisyami Ma Sucha. Abandon all varieties of religions and just surrender unto me I shall deliver you all from sinful reactions. Do not fear. Thus the Lord takes all responsibilities for one who surrenders unto him, and he indemnifies such a person against all reactions of sins. Excuse me. Mala nirmochanam pumsa jala snanam dine dine sakrit gritam mrityasanyam samsara mala nasanam. One may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath in water, but if one takes a bath even once in the sacred Ganges water of Bhagavad-Gita, for him the dirt of material life is altogether vanquished. Again, the Gita Mahatmya, another verse, Gita su Gita Kartavya kim anyar shastravashatarar ya swayam padma abhyasya mukha padma vinistritya. Because Bhagavad-Gita is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one need not read any other Vedic literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad-Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in material activities that it is not possible for them to read all the Vedic literatures. But this is not necessary. This one book, Bhagavad-Gita, will suffice, because it is the essence of all Vedic literatures, and especially because it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Gita Mahatmya. As it is said, Bharatam tra sarvasvam Vishnu vraktra vinishritam Gita gango dakkam pritva Punar janma navidyate. One who drinks the water of the Ganges attains salvation. So what to speak of one who drinks the nectar of Bhagavad-Gita? Bhagavad-Gita is the essential nectar of the Mahabharata, and it is spoken by Krishna himself, the original Vishnu. Gita Mahatmya. Bhagavad-Gita comes from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Ganges is said to emanate from the lotus feet of the Lord. Of course, there is no difference between the mouth and the feet of the Supreme Lord. But from an impartial study, we can appreciate the Bhagavad-Gita is even more important than the waters of the Ganges. Saro pani shado gavo dogda Gopala Nandana Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Durgdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. The Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all Upanishads, is just like a cow. And Lord Krishna, who is famous as the cowherd boy, is milking this cow. Arjuna is just like the calf, and learned scholars and pure devotees are to drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. Gita Mahatmya. Ekam Shistram Devaki Putra Gatim Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantrastasya Namani Yanti Yani Karma Pyakam Tasya Devasya Seva. The Gita Mahatmya 7. In this present day, people are very much eager to have one scripture and one God, one religion, and one occupation. Therefore, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putram Gitim. Let there be one scripture only and one common scripture for the whole world, Bhagavad Gita. Ekat Devo Devaki Putra Eva. Let there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. Eko Mantras Tasya Namani. And one hymn, one mantra, one prayer. The chanting of this name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Karmanyat ekam tasya devasya seva. And let there be one work only, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I believe that's where I'm supposed to stop. The next page, of course, gives the entire disciplic, or the prominent, I should say, the prominent members who have handed this wonderful Krishna conscious philosophy down to us, from Lord Krishna to Brahma, Narada, etc. So, I will start the discussion by pointing out that when I read this introduction to the Bhagavad-Gita, probably about 40 years ago, I like studying the verses, but I haven't really read the Bhagavad-Gita's introduction for a while, that when Prabhupada made this proclamation, particularly at the end here, where he very boldly says, in Gita, Krishna said, declare it boldly, my devotee never perishes. So Prabhupada is doing that here. He's very boldly declaring, let there be one religion and one occupation. And I thought to myself, oh boy, this is pretty bold. And then he goes on to say there should only be one scripture, Bhagavad-Gita. And there should only be one name for God, Sri Krishna. Although he's not really saying that. Well, actually he is saying that there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. And one hymn, one mantra, one prayer, and he gives the Hare Krishna mantra. And let there be one service. So where I come from in the Western world, back 40 years ago, and I think it's probably still a little true today, this could be considered a little controversial. Because obviously there are other people with other faiths, and they are going to say, no, 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 it shouldn't be your Bhagavad Gita, it should be our Bible or our Quran. Or something like that. There's so many different faiths and teachings out there. And so, but Prabhupada is saying, no, this should be it. So my discussion tonight is, why is it that Bhagavad Gita should be, just as Prabhupada said, why should it be the only one? There's many good reasons. So, we can have a discussion on this, but I will start it by saying one very good reason, to the best of my knowledge. This requires a little bit of interfaith knowledge here. But the Bhagavad Gita, as it is said earlier in the purport, or in his previous paragraphs, is because it's actually spoken by Krishna himself. The Bible is not spoken by God himself, it's written by the followers of that particular faith. And the Quran is not spoken by Muhammad himself, it's written by Allah. And if you go through all the different literatures, you'll find you have the Tibetan Buddhists and so forth. They don't actually have any scriptures. I actually asked a question to a Tibetan monk who came to our town once, and I was very curious. I said, is there some common scripture that holds the Buddhist tradition together, that all the different, because Buddhists have different faiths and, what do you call it, denominations maybe. And I wanted to know, because, you know, for us, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedic literatures are so absolutely essentially important. The Guru Shastra Sadhu system, Shastra is one of the legs that holds our whole tradition together. So I was naturally very curious. I wanted to know, do the Buddhists have some scripture? And he looked at me and he said, no. And I said, well, then what do you have? I mean, I almost found the answer hard to accept. And he said, well, we have sutras. And I said, well, what are they? And he said, they're the realizations of the monks as they sit, sometimes maybe for 10 hours a day, for several days a week, which is interesting and it's something to be respected, but it's not the same as this. It's not the same as Bhagavad Gita. It's not the same as something that we're actually being given many good reasons to accept is coming from a very divine source. So I'm just curious, and I have a lot of points here, but I kind of like to turn this a little interactive. Can anybody else think of some other reasons why the Bhagavad Gita is so much extraordinary? Go ahead.
Because everything we need to know about human life and how to live that life is written in the Gita. We don't need anything.
Yes, that's true. I would qualify that a little bit, because some of these other traditions would say, well, you can get that from our books too. You can get everything you need to know. Huh? Okay, well, the Prabhupada's saying there should be one scripture. It should be Bhagavad-Gita. We should be one mantra, Hare Krishna. Would you like to add something? Yeah, you. You had your hand up?
I want to add that it's very much necessary to have one scripture, one mantra.
Yes.
Because
It's what?
there is a variety of scriptures that like it is very difficult to study them. They are creating confusion in the mind to whom we should study it.
Oh, sorry, I've given the microphone. I'm having a hard time.
Uniqueness.
Must be uniqueness.
Uniqueness.
Yeah. So you're saying...
There must be uniqueness. Uniqueness means also to study the one thing so that each and everybody can understand.
Yeah, what you're saying, there must be some focal point.
Without studying, analyzing the things actually, we are after the various things actually. So it is creating the confusion in the society.
If there's too many scriptures, everybody's going in different directions.
Without studying it. Without
Yes,
learning.
yes.
We are going after Shiva, we are going after various activities.
Well, this is a very good argument for why there must be one scripture.
One scripture.
Right.
One scripture, one mantra actually,
Right.
one God. It is very much easy to develop a society.
Okay, so that's what Prabhupada is saying. That's all very good, but I want to push you a little bit more. But why should it be Bhagavad-Gita and not somebody else's scripture? You want to give some answer? Sarva will be the microphone man, hopefully. Although it looks like it's on a cord, so be careful. Why should it be Bhagavad-Gita? The Muslim man will say it should be Quran, right? The Christian will say it should be the Bible. Why should it be Bhagavad-Gita?
English is not my language, but I've tried.
Okay.
In this religion, if you see all the aspects of the universal, of the material world, for example, women, children, plants, earth, water, mountain, everything, material thing, especially things who have a soul. Okay? If you see the way God, the way Bhagavad-Gita is talking to human beings about treating your
everything
behavior,
properly.
Your behavior, acting, yes, in the Bhagavad-Gita, you're behaving and acting towards all these aspects of life to keep life in harmony. This is something you don't find in the Bible. Like in the Bible, they say, "Thou should not kill." But Christianity, Christmas is one big slaughter party of innocent
They don't have it
without any resistance.
Okay, very good.
And drinking alcohol and dancing and partying. Actually, Christmas in the Western world, well, forgive me, there are exceptions. It's one big slaughter party and one thing, one big celebrating of material enjoyment.
Okay, so let me summarize.
So in my culture, we say the Bhagavad-Gita, I would say, is very vrouwvriendelijk, very diervriendelijk, very milieuvriendelijk, meaning all aspects in life, God said the way you should treat everything. The trees, the plants, the animals, the women, the children, the man-woman relationship, everything. I think if you see other religion, how, for example, Quran, how they are treating the cows, everything. And in this book, in relation to every aspect, which is material, it is what has written, how to behave, how to act, how to treat them, how to interfere, and how to behave.
Okay, so it's okay. So she's saying that in her observation that the Gita is giving much more clear instructions, and certainly we can judge something by, the Christian saying is judge a tree by its fruit. We can see that when people read Bhagavad Gita, for the most part, immediately they stop killing animals. They stop attending these places where you buy all these different meat products. They're more respectful to the environment and so forth. So that would be a vote in the category of cause and effect. You read Gita, it changes your life. And that's a very important way, because that's one of the 4 legs of our Dharma, right? Mercy. And if this mercy is lost, then all of a sudden society is collapsing. Okay? Anybody else? I've got a whole bunch of them here, but before I read them off, I want to see what you guys can come up with. Why should we study Bhagavad Gita instead of some other? There's so many different faiths and religions out there. Why should we study Bhagavad Gita? Yes.
Some Maharaj thought that the Bible
you're saying people are motivated by the Bible for some payoff. They worship God and go to heaven, right? Whereas Bhagavad-Gita, we do devotional service. Just the devotional service itself is so satisfying. Devotee, when you mature enough in your realization, you don't even need anything else. Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay, all right, that's a good point. So that's a good point. In devotional service, if one actually takes it up with alacrity, then that's all. In fact, that's what Lord Chaitanya is praying. Please just allow me to do some service. That's what all the devotees are praying for. It doesn't matter, send me to hell. If I'm in hell with devotional service, it's not so bad. And if I'm in Hawaii or some very beautiful place and I have all the happiness I could possibly expect from a material point of view, and I have no Krishna conscious devotional service, then everything is miserable. And we actually see many examples that in so many places around the world, people have so much opulence in the Western world, it's hard to even imagine for some of the people in India the type of opulence they have. And yet they're fighting and arguing and going to the law court and suing each other and trying to get more money and cheating. And this is what you were talking about, that what's the use of these other faiths if they're not actually changing the heart of the individual? If it doesn't change the heart, then how effective is it? Would you like to say something else?
Yes. I was thinking too about, I know when I was searching, one thing I found is that the Gita gave you more description about how the world works, what's your place in the world, about being a soul, and about establishing that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It gives very detailed information.
Yes.
About the questions
Yes.
that you have about
Yes.
Godhead.
Specific, tangible answers. That's actually one of the things on my list. The Gita gives us actually very specific, tangible reference points to work from. For example, although many people in the West who call themselves spiritual, I don't want to turn this into Christian bashing or anything like that, because I'm not even talking about them now. It's easy to do that, but we actually know some very sincere friends that are following Christianity the best they know. They're very nice people, and that's all they can understand right now. Slowly they'll mature, but some people who have gone beyond Christianity and they following some path, they may even have some respect for Bhagavad-Gita, but they won't translate the last 6 chapters, because the last 6 chapters are giving some very specific things about what? Divine and demoniac nature. What do you mean there's a demoniac nature? Yeah, get tuned in here, folks. There's things that are going on that are not so nice, and you need to be aware of it. The 3 modes of material nature. Whoa, 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 what do you mean there's modes? I thought everything was just kind of be happy and be fun. I'm being a little facetious here, but there's a lot of people who their brain hasn't matured enough to realize, no, there's actually, if you associate with certain people in the mode of ignorance, you will develop those qualities, and you will act in the mode of ignorance, and we know that's not a very healthy place to be. So you have to know what are the qualities of the mode of ignorance. And keep in mind, all these other traditions have this information there, but in many cases you have to pry it out of it. In some cases you have to be a historian, you have to know the tradition, you have to know the place and where it was spoken and how it was spoken and what the innuendos of the languages are and the nuances of the language. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's hard enough to even just understand basic scriptural traditions without having to become a historian. And Bhagavad-Gita says you don't have to become a historian. You don't have to become a big scholar. You just surrender unto me. Do everything, offer yat karoshi yat asnasi yat jahosi dadasi yat. Everything you do, everything you offer or give away should be done as an offering to me. That's very simple. You don't have to be a scholar to do that. Would you like to add something?
What are the root cause of our suffering, that is birth, old age, disease and death? And Bhagavad-Gita is giving solution for all this. And actually this doesn't find in other places where after the death, where the soul goes, what is the destination, and all the process, where we will go. So as per that, while living this lifestyle, how we have to live, and after this, where will we go? The detailed knowledge we get from Bhagavad-Gita, so we can come out of all these clutches of this thing.
Yes. Yes, that comes under the category, again, of detailed knowledge. And absolutely, some of these other traditions don't necessarily acknowledge the fact that you have another life after this one, right? In Christianity, for the most part, although it's interesting because from a theological point of view in Christianity, and I believe it's true for Islam as well, and again, I'm saying this very respectfully, I don't want to be bashing any other tradition because they're doing the best that they can. There's no understanding or concept of life after death, whereas in our tradition there is. And it's a very, very elaborately explained. And I might be, Dharmatma has asked me maybe to give another Bhagavatam class, and if I do, I'll probably talk about this concept of this repeated life, life after death, this concept of reincarnation. So without reincarnation, then it becomes really messy, because why is it that some people we see here, some people are in the street, they're barely surviving and they're asking for some paisa? And then there's other people riding on these very expensive motorbikes and big automobiles, and they're dressed very nicely and they're living in some very wealthy apartment. Why is it that one person is born in such a terrible, terrible situation, and another person is born so successfully wealthy? If God is fair, if you don't have the concept of reincarnation, you have no good explanation for that.
But they blame God for it.
Well,
They say it's God is bad, or it is incident.
who is they?
Western world.
They might. There's all. They do all.
Somebody is very rich, or somebody is very beautiful.
Well, I'm talking from a theological point of view. From a theological point of view, they really do not have an adequate answer. Believe me, I've asked a lot of people who are theologians and ministers and representatives of these other traditions, and frequently they'll just, there's a classic kind of, what do you call it, escape clause. I'm sure you've all heard it. God works in very mysterious ways. Right? They just go, I don't know, I can't figure it out. But I believe it. Okay? So we're discussing, why is the Bhagavad-Gita, Prabhupada's making a very profound statement here. Should be one mantra, Hare Krishna mantra. There should be one book, Bhagavad-Gita. There should be one God, Sri Krishna. Of course, there is one God. I think people argue about what we should call him, but we call him Sri Krishna. Krishna means the all-attractive. Who can argue with that? God is all-attractive. You have some problem with this? What, is your God ugly? I don't know what the Sanskrit word would be for it, but we could come up with one, right? Okay, so anybody else have some ideas as to this gentleman again?
Well, this ties into the Srimad Bhagavatam verse that kicks out all cheating religion.
Kicks out all cheating religion. Right.
Kicks out all cheating religion. So Jesus wanted, the surrender, pure surrender to Krishna and service. There's a lot of religions and surely motivated. So the Bhagavatam is the highest, and of course Bhagavad-Gita is associated with Bhagavatam.
So he's saying that there's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says that, right in the very first canto, he says that this Bhagavad Purana kicks out all the cheating religions, and it is meant for those who are only seriously motivated. And cheating religion is the tense of, Prabhupada always usually referred to it as kind of doing business. I'll worship you, God, if you give me a nice car. And it sounds silly, but it's astonishing how there's a lot of people. I could give you so many anecdotal stories where I've heard people, one gentleman, I was sitting in a, what do you call it, interfaith discussion, and one gentleman he's speaking in the microphone, and he's saying, well, I purchased a $25,000 car. I don't have any money in the bank, but I'm expecting God will give me money before the end of the week so I can pay my bill. And he was very serious about it. So is this a cheating religion? And if he doesn't pay my bill, I'm going to run away and I'm not going to believe in him anymore. Right? So this is the kind of thing that goes on. I'm being a little harsh maybe here, but I could experience this. If you ask people, you'll find this what goes on. So you're suggesting that this Bhagavad-Gita, this Bhagavad Purana, if that's what you want from God, then don't come here, because you're not going to get that here. You're going to get something different. If you want something serious and real, you have to become serious and real. Would you like to add a contribution as to why we should study just Bhagavad Gita and not so much? Why is it so much superior?
Well, for me, one of the things that was interesting that I was just kind of blown away by the histories and the details. Because when I studied Christianity, there's this huge gap where Jesus basically disappears when he's 12, and then all of a sudden he reemerges when he's like 30 or 31, and it's like, wait a minute, where did he go for those 17 or 18 years? A lot of people think he went to India and became a great yogi and learned from the Indian, the Indian philosophy and science. So that to me was like really interesting,
I think most of the people who suggest this theory that Jesus came to Jagannath Puri and studied with the monks there for so many years, I think that is not the average standard Christian who believes that. That's usually the people who are moving towards Krishna consciousness or some intermediate flavor towards Krishna consciousness. The average Christian, if you tell them that, they'll tell you to get out, you heretic. They rather keep a big dark cloud there, Okay.
Down in the Vatican, I've always suspected in the Vatican, if they would let people go down in the basement in the Vatican where all those libraries are, I say let's open them up and look. Because somebody knows where Jesus was for those 18 years, but they won't tell us.
Right. Well, as devotees, let the Catholics work that out. That's their business. Our business is whether they do it or they don't do it, it really doesn't affect us. We have one duty, and that is to keep pressing forward, teaching Bhagavad-Gita, sharing our books, going Sankirtan, having Harinam party, so forth, and also studying ourselves and actually appreciating what we have here. We have a tremendously valuable resource, and how much time do we spend? In fact, I think Prabhupada made some comment about that, about he's pointing out that the Vedic literatures are so vast. Maybe I'll start. Is anybody else? I'm going to go through a list of things here, but anybody else does anything else come to mind? Why Bhagavad-Gita? Out of all the different faiths and traditions, why is it so superior? And you made some very good suggestions too. I'm going to probably echo some of those back, but I'm going to add some more. Oldest. Yeah, if you read chapter 7, I believe it is, chapter 4, what is it? Imam vivasyate yogam proktavam ham avyayam vivishvan manave prahur manur ikshvakrave brivit. Lord Manu was telling, I originally spoke this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivishwan. And Vivishwan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. For those of you who were in the program the other night with my universal map of time, if you do the mathematics on that, sometimes I say this for shock factor. Sometimes I'll say it, like when a Christian comes out, the Bible's 2,000 years old. I say, well, our book is 120 million years old. Of course, their eyes close over. Wow, what? What, you mean there was something here 120 million years ago? You remember they also, and this is another one of the points. Remember, Bhagavad-Gita is a 700-verse, super hyper-condensed, consolidated, short essence of what you need from all the Vedas. Because if you had just the Bhagavad Purana, we all know, what is that, 18,000 verses? And that's one of the shorter Puranas. The Padma Purana is 50-some thousand verses. You're talking about filling the whole bookcase up here. Just the Puranas in the mode of goodness would literally fill up this whole bookcase. How much of that are you going to be able to read, even if you didn't have to go to work and didn't have to sleep and didn't have to eat and didn't have to wash your body? How much time do you have to do that? So Krishna is saying, no, you just take these 700 verses. And if you actually study these 700 verses closely, you'll find so many of them, they're not exactly the same, but they definitely repeat the same instruction. There's several places where the same instruction is being a little bit reworded, but it's the same instruction, so it's not even 700 unique verses. They're repetitive. Did you want to say something?
Just one other comment. Again, when I read the Bhagavad-Gita, I think of a psychology But specifically, I think of the psychology of obviously a soldier going into war, into a battle. And I think of our American soldiers and how distressed they are. In fact, I've told many soldiers, many vets that I know, I say, have you read the Bhagavad-Gita? So many of them are suffering horribly from post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like the Bhagavad-Gita should be required reading in our military, because personally I think it will give the right frame of mind for a young man that has to go into a battle and get his mind right, get his spirit, get his consciousness focused and directed, and then deal with it so that when he comes back from the war, his mind and his consciousness is okay. We have so many of our vets are committing suicide.
Right.
It's unbelievable how many of our vets are killing suicide. I hear these numbers like 20 American vets every day.
That's a reflection of how mixed up and confused and lost our Western society is, and that's actually a very good idea. If you want to help spearhead that, you got my business card. You contact me. I know a devotee who would love to help facilitate that. He's a very advanced devotee, also in California, and he's distributing books all over the place. And that's a very excellent idea. I wouldn't be surprised if there's somebody already working on that project. Okay, so let's move forward here in terms of, so I was saying, Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses. It's the essence of all the Vedic literatures, and it's probably even shorter than 700 if you want to just pull the real gems out to kind of like learn and integrate into your life. Historically we've talked about how it's so incredibly old. There is nothing older. Not that old in itself really means anything, but here's something to keep in mind, which is why the Bhagavad Gita is superior to all these other books, is it was spoken prior to the beginning of Kali Yuga. Every other one of these traditions occurred during Kali Yuga. That means it's messed up. That's putting it rudely. Okay? Because everything in Kali Yuga gets messed up. And if you actually look historically, go back, I wouldn't say this too assertively, but there does seem to be some pattern that as you go back in time, if you look back in the old Jewish traditions, many of the original devotees who helped start this movement came from the Jewish tradition. And the Jews are they follow a lot of the same rigor that we as devotees have for appreciating their Torah and their ancient traditions. And they're very, and I don't want to say this in a negative way, I actually respect them. They're a little like Smarta Brahmins in the sense, no, you have to do it this way, you have to do it this way. They're very, very formal. And that goes way back in time. And then along comes Christianity, and there's some value there. We don't want to minimize it. But some things were lost, and then you come further down to the tradition of Islam is another 600 years down the road, and now it's getting down to, and again, I want to say this respectfully, the Torah everything, I think every chapter in the Torah says Allah is great, all respects to Allah. But I think Prajarani was making the comment that if you wanted, or one of the ladies here was making the comment that if you want to know about God in the Bible, it says He's great. Okay, I'd like a little more knowledge than that, please. You don't get this knowledge in these other books, but you do get it in our Bhagavatam, 10th Canto. You find out all sorts of things about Krishna when he was a little boy, what he looked like and what he did. So the knowledge is there, okay? So as you come into, so our Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Vivishwan 120 million years ago. That was way before Kali Yuga. Of course, the reason why it's stated in the Bhagavad Gita is because he's saying, I'm now instructing it again at the dawn of Kali Yuga, because it was lost. So I'm instructing it again. But it's coming from Krishna, so that's not messed up. Okay? So let's now look at the other, one of the other reasons why Bhagavad Gita is so extraordinary. You can take You can walk down the street, any one of these ashrams, I don't care what their core tradition is, and you, of course, most of them, as far as I know, will have some copy of Bhagavad-Gita. If they're in Vrindavan, I don't know what they're doing here if they don't have some copy of Bhagavad-Gita on their shelf. Now, admittedly, if you were to go into whatever their equivalent of the purports are, and probably even the translations may be different, but they're not going to change, what is the verse? I said earlier, one of the most highly quoted verses, Sarva Dharmam Parikshikja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. You open up their book and that's what it's going to say. Because if it doesn't say that, somebody's going to say, what's wrong with you people? How did you change that? That in the Sanskrit will be there. Now they may have their own twisted interpretation. But in these other traditions, at least I can tell you, if you punch into Google, and again, I don't want to bash the Christians, but they do have a very serious theological problem. Because if you look at the history of the Bible, it's been changed, I don't know, countless times. One of the things that King James was known for was he said, I'm the king, and this is the way I'm translating it, and you're going to accept it. And prior to that, it was all over the place. And I don't want to turn this into a Christian history class, but that's the history. And now even the King James Bible, people are going, oh, that's too, you know, therefore thou shalt not this, that, and the other thing, you know. And people go, they just say, don't do it. There's scholars that are translating. Now they have the New English Revised Version. They even have it in Ubonics for the inner city people. They talk with their own, like, crypto language, you know. There's so many versions. And every time there's a little slight adjustment, there's something lost, okay? One example that I can tell you, when I was doing distribution in Radhanamra many years ago, it used to say, Bhagavad-Gita, the Bible said, thou shalt not kill. That's what King James Version says, thou shalt not kill. And then as our movement became, I think we had something to do with this. We were pointing out what this lady was very nice to say. Why your Jesus says thou shalt not kill and you're killing all these cows. Prabhupada made this point over and over again. There's so many tapes and examples where Prabhupada, that one very famous interview with the French, yeah, it was what was he, a bishop or something? He was cardinal. He was a cardinal Diana. Very high up in the Catholic Church, and Prabhupada talked to him for 25 minutes and he just kept on pounding him. You say thou shalt not kill. Why are you killing the cow? And he was going all over the place trying to explain it. No, it says thou shalt not kill. Stop killing the cow. Right? You know that lecture? Yeah.
Did he try to say that the cow does not have a soul?
Well, he said so many things.
He said some animals don't have a soul?
Yeah, that's a common way to avoid it. So, somebody decided, no, those Hare Krishnas are pushing this point. We better just change it to thou shalt not murder. Okay? And now there's Bibles out. You look at it, it'll say thou shalt not murder. Okay? Huh?
God never said thou shalt not murder.
Anyhow, I'm just pointing out, we're talking about why our Bhagavad Gita is so excellent. So now am I correct to understand this ends at 6:30? When does this class end? Or does anybody care?
You can go.
When is it supposed? Oh, I was led to believe 5 to 6:30. Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me just run down some things here, because I think you'll find some of these very valuable in understanding why the Bhagavad Gita is so much superior. And then if we have some questions, we can discuss. So I'll try to go through this relatively quickly. Okay, so we talked, I'm going to check them off here. We talked about how it's the oldest and it's unchanged. Like I said, the interpretations might be changed, but the Sanskrit's not changed. And you can argue ad infinitum about how the Sanskrit's interpreted, but that's one of the beautiful things and the most honest things that Prabhupada puts here. He gives the word for word, and he says to the Sanskrit scholars, this is the way I'm translating it. You show me where I've done something incorrect. He's being very bold. He's saying, that's the translation. Tell me where you think it's wrong. And some of these other translations, they're not so honest. I've told this story many times. The first Bhagavad-Gita I read was a tiny little thin book, about maybe 100 pages, very small paperback you can stick in your pocket. No translations, no Sanskrit. And it was poetically written, and I was just completely confused when I said, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Okay, just write whatever you want. I just try, when you're getting a book from another language, you're counting on the person translating. He's going to do it honestly, but that cheating propensity is always there. So, okay, so it's the oldest, it's unchanged, the Sanskrit is unchanged, it's original. Somebody pointed out here, it's not cryptic. You start reading some of these other scriptures, they're written almost like, cryptology, For example, in the Bible, this is probably not a real good example, but it's the first one comes up. It says, one should fear the Lord. And you actually start talking to some of the ministers, you mean I'm supposed to be running around going, oh my gosh, okay, I'm being good. And of course it's silly, but that's what it says. And they say, well, that's not what it means. Well, then what does it mean? That's what it says. They're probably going to come out with a new edition to try to clean that up, okay? So it's not cryptic. The Bhagavad Gita is not cryptic. It's very clear. Surrender unto me. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, give away, it should be done as an offering unto me. Krishna gives such very clear instructions. He says, this is what's in the mode of goodness, this is what's in the mode of passion, this is what's in the mode of ignorance. Now go look at what you're doing and figure out where you are and clean it up. It's very clear and concise, sutras. Okay. You don't need to have a history, education in history to understand Bhagavad Gita, because it's eternal, right? You don't need to know all the details about Indian culture and Vedic history when Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, right? He's saying, I am now declaring to you everything both phenomenal and noumenal, after knowing which there shall be nothing further to be known. He's not talking, I'm going to tell you how to fix cars or how to do accounting. We don't care about that. That's got nothing to do with one's transcendental realization. But he is going to give us knowledge of the soul, who the behavior, who's the performer of actions, what is action, what is inaction. That's what you need to know. It's very clear. There's no, what do they call it? Riddles. No riddles. Okay. And of course, we've already mentioned, Bhagavad Gita is supported by a vast canon of knowledge. We've already said this several points now. Although it's only 700 verses, it's supported by the whole the Bhagavad Purana and all the other Puranas, particularly the ones in the mode of goodness, the 6 top ones. Okay, and the 6 top ones are the ones you evolve to from the lower Puranas in the mode of Tamagun and Rajagun. So you actually add it all up. We're talking about this huge library of references that you can get. Not that everybody needs this information, but if you want to know how to raise cows, to build a city, how to run a house, how to do puja, there's the Garuda Purana is all about what happens after death. There's vast knowledge of whatever you want to know, and it's all summarized and boiled down and to the point in the Bhagavad Gita. Here's another interesting one. Bhagavad Gita is written in Sanskrit. And it's not just Sanskrit, but it's a poetic rendering of Sanskrit. Now, why does that really make any difference? I mean, really, if you think about it. Well, maybe it doesn't. But the fact that it is written in perfect poetic Sanskrit makes one go, whoa, that's even, people are enamored by William Shakespeare because he wrote all these fantastic plays. Well, Veda Vyas wrote 10 times as much as William Shakespeare, and he wrote him in perfect Vedic, Sanskrit meter and rhyme. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but I know enough to appreciate that no ordinary person can do that. No ordinary person can do that. So that in itself makes it stand out as extraordinary, right? It's not just somebody reading something in prose. Okay, don't do this. No. And there's so many people. And especially in the last 100 years, I don't even want to go into it. There's people that are creating their own religions, and psychiatrists and therapists and stuff. And You know, you have to acknowledge that this is coming from some extraordinary source if you actually understand Sanskrit. And here's another thing. I used to work in the computer programming. I worked as a database engineer for the United States Navy. So I have some knowledge in this field. And it's interesting to note that in the world of programming, trying to get human brains to communicate with machines and binary operations and so forth, and I don't know the details, but I saw more than one reference about how those who are very deeply involved in this programming languaging thing, how they're really starting to look closely at Sanskrit, because Sanskrit has very formal rules. If you look at the American language, it's a mess. We spell the words different ways, and they mean different things, and they sound the same, but they're completely different. You know, and it's because it's kind of got merged together from all these other languages, and that's just the way it's evolved, and now it's the world language. You know, God bless everybody to learn American. You know, it's probably the sloppiest language in the world, and yet everybody's going to be forced to learn it because we're going to push it on you. You know, we should actually learn Sanskrit. It makes more sense, okay? And unfortunately, the Indian government, I think, is actually starting to crank it up a little bit and say, hey, we got to start taking our Sanskrit more seriously. Isn't it? I think the Indian government is starting to fund the revival of Sanskrit because they're realizing it's a tremendous valuable thing. So it's not just any other language. And in fact, there was a polyglot, which is a fancy word for saying a man who knows many, many languages, about 1860s. I don't know if I'll be able to remember his name, but he's in one of the slideshows I put together. He knew like something like 34 different languages. I try to imagine somebody who could speak fluently 34 different languages. That's what the word polyglot means. And he made a comment saying, and out of all the languages, Sanskrit stood out on its own. There was no language that came close to the way that Sanskrit was. And he would know. He knew 34 different languages. So that's an impartial vote for, wow, there's something really extraordinary here. Okay, so it...
You know that the modern languages have Sanskrit as basement, like Italian, Portugal, French, Spanish. I happen to know some of them. And like we say thus means in Sanskrit 10, but thus is in Spain and in France also. And I think Italian also. So actually the modern Roman language, they have all Sanskrit as basement.
Yeah, so we do find some of the Sanskrit is just...
Like in India, somebody rang on the door, and my mother or everybody will say, "Ke hai?" That is exactly what the Spanish people say, "Ke hai?" Meaning who is there or who has come.
Well,
the same like Hindi or Sanskrit.
English, the English language is equally willing to accept any kind of new linguistic things that anybody wants to shove into it. So, and in fact, actually, as a result of the Hare Krishna movement, we have shoved Hare Krishna into the English dictionary. I remember when it came out, the devotees were going, "Hey, Hare Krishna's in the dictionary." Not sure exactly what they put as the interpretation, but it was in there. But words like dharma, okay, that's now in the English dictionary. I don't think 100 years ago you'd see it in there. Of course, that's partially also due to the Buddhists, because they throw around the word dharma a lot also. And I'm sure there's others, but are not coming to my mind right now. So, and Sanskrit is slowly learning worldwide respect, so that's another reason. But here's, and also, I say this very respectfully, the Indian culture and the teachings of the Vedic literatures, although there's been some conflicts maybe in Sri Lanka and so forth, but if you look at the history of mankind, you will see, particularly in the nature of war, you will find that the majority of the wars that have been fought on one side or the other will either be a bunch of Christians or a bunch of Muslims. And I apologize for them for saying that, but that is a historic fact. There's been a few wars where some other people got together, but if you actually do a history of it, you'll see the Christians are warring against somebody, or the Muslims, and there's a lot of them where the Christians and Muslims are warring against each other. But you don't see that. You don't see India running around the world imperializing everything. I got to become an Indian, we're going to we're going to teach you our Bhagavad-Gita. I mean, the devotees are doing that now. We're doing it in a very loving way. That's our weapon, right? But we're not going in there and crunching people and shooting them down and, you know, putting taxes on their head or whatever horrible things some people do. I mean, in India's today, even we're seeing India, so many of these other people are coming in. You say, you got to follow our tradition, and the Indians are gentle and kind. So, oh, you worship God? Yeah, we worship God. We'll do it all together. No, you got to do it our way. You know, oh, why? We can't do it together. You know, I think India is finally getting to the point. No, wait a minute, stop. You know, they're very reluctant because it's a passive faith, because they have faith in Krishna. They don't need to conquer the world. They know Krishna's in charge. Which is my final point, which is probably the most important point, if you think about it, is that in the Vedic tradition, in the Bhagavad-Gita, what you have is a faith that literally doesn't just tolerate, but it opens its arms and it embraces all the other traditions. You want to worship Jesus Christ? You worship Jesus Christ. Very good. We'll come to your church and we'll worship him with you. You want to worship Allah? We'll come to your mosque and we'll worship Allah with you. You want to be an atheist? Very good. You be an atheist. We're not going to go there, but you can do whatever you like. Okay. It's an embrace of faith. There's place for everybody. You don't ever see a devotee saying, and Prabhupada makes his point so many times, he doesn't say, no, you have to worship Bhagavad-Gita or get out. What does he say? He says, if you are a Christian, become a good Christian. If you are a Muslim, become a good Muslim. And if you're an atheist, keep reading, and eventually you'll realize you're not going to get anywhere until you start accepting something beyond the pea-like brain that you have. You think you can figure it all out. Krishna is a Kinchana. You'll never figure it out on your own. Okay? And this is the reason why Bhagavad-Gita should be the only book. You can never have peace if you've got people saying, you got to do it my way. No, you got to do it my way. And what happens? And actually, this is the reason why in the Western world, a lot of people are just giving up on religion altogether. And this is one of the biggest reasons of or resistances or objections that we have when we go out and try to teach, or we try to even, not even teach, just to sell a book. No, I gave up on religion. I don't care. I don't want to. No, all religion is the same thing. You're proselytizing. I don't want your faith. It means, I've actually had people say to me, what is it? I had people say things like, I'm a little bit of a rascal. I like to poke my nose into everybody else to see what they're saying, just to try to understand it. Because otherwise we're just preaching to the choir. So I like to find out, okay, what are you saying over there? So I went to one seminar and one lady was saying, the reason why there's so much trouble in the world today is because of religion. Because you think your religion is right, you think your religion is right, you think your religion is right, and then you all fight. And unfortunately, there's a lot of truth to that. But that's not our tradition, right? I don't see the devotees. We fight with words. We will fight very ferociously, philosophically, and we'll say to people, why are you doing this nonsense? You tell me. Prabhupada, one of the first questions he'd always ask people when devotees, his disciples would bring all these scholars and managers from different, places in government, welfare office, and philosophers and physicists. And the very first thing he would ask each one of them is, what is your philosophy? What are you teaching? He'd always go bam, right to the core. What is your philosophy? Do you believe in God? What do you believe? You tell me. And whatever they'd say, as soon as they'd start going, if they'd say something that we also teach, he'd say, yes, that is right. And as soon as they go, no, that is wrong. Right? He'd just immediately say, no, that is nonsense. That is a way of a monkey brain. Okay? He would immediately stop it. Maybe he wouldn't use those words, but that's what he was like. Because he wanted people to understand. There was a famous book, I don't know how many, this might be before some people's time here. There was a very famous book years ago called, if you've heard of this book, let me know, called I'm Okay, You're Okay. I'm sure you've heard of it. People from the West have probably heard of it. I'm Okay? It's probably about 25, 30 years old, right? Very popular book. And it was sort of like on the the surge of the whole New Age movement. It's like, hey, I'm okay, you're okay too, and he's okay also. We're all okay, everything's good. Probably came along and said, no, I'm okay and you are not okay. Right? And he didn't have any shame or hesitation to do it. And they go, what? That's not politically correct. Devotees aren't concerned about politically correct. We're concerned about Krishna correct. Why? Because if it's not Krishna correct, finished, it can't possibly be helpful. In fact, it not only can't possibly be helpful, but it will actually be destructive. You will be contributing to the problem. Like they say, there's an old saying in America that says, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. So get with the program. Which one are you going to be? And if you actually take the time to study and understand this Bhagavad-Gita, then the solution is here. So integrate it into your life and start doing, as Lord Chaitanya said, everyone you meet, to the best of your ability. And some people, you can't do it, but to the best of your ability, please share them this philosophy of Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and help waken them up from this very cotton head, they don't know which way they're going. I think all of us here who've gone through that phase of, I know I found out about Krishna consciousness just as I was it was my second year in college. And I was just, there's got to be something. I read that first Bhagavad Gita. I was so disappointed. I knew the Bhagavad Gita had some value, but I was like, so I went racing out to get a copy, and I got this little tiny penguin book, and this is a Bhagavad Gita? Okay. Of course, I didn't like to read, so I think, well, I'll get the really small one, and that's what I'll read. And you get what you pay for, I said, oh, it was hardly a little bigger than this, and I said, oh, what is this Bhagavad Gita? But by Krishna's mercy on me, because I still sincerely, I knew there was, something was wrong, I said, what is this? I know it's a very valuable book. It's changed the whole course of history in India. Everybody talks about it. How come I don't get it? And then fortunately, the next time I came in touch with it, it was with the Macmillan 1972 big book. Oh, that's a very serious book. And there's a whole story behind that. Yeah, it's right here. Well, this isn't the Macmillan one, but it's very similar, yeah. It was like, whoa, wait, whoa. For a guy who doesn't like to read, it's like, oh man, there's not a whole lot of pictures here, But there's some Sanskrit, which I'm not going to read that. It's not that big when you chop out all the words that I can't even possibly understand and just read the English stuff. That was my transition to coming, and now I have some interest in the Sanskrit and so forth. So anyhow, I think I've probably gone a little over. If anybody wants to ask questions or add some comments, it sounds like this is a little informal, so we can do that if you want.
I was thinking one thing, that I have a cousin brother.
Oh, there's a microphone. Let him speak.
I have a cousin brother who is inquisitive about my spiritual...
Little closer.
My spiritual path.
Uh-huh.
So he's asking questions, he's inquisitive, and he thinks that what I'm doing is a belief.
A belief, huh?
And he thinks that it is also a culture that is too far from him.
Mm-hmm.
And he thinks that I also don't like Christianism. He says he's from France. And he says I am attracted to Buddhism. So many people actually...
Everybody's going to Buddhism. Because you don't have to do anything. It's all just...
But they actually don't really know what is Buddhism anyway.
No, they don't. They follow Buddhism, but you ask them what it is, and they go, I don't know. That's what I like about it. I mean, I've actually met people. I'm shocked sometimes. You actually start talking to people. I follow Buddhism. Oh, great. So you're a vegetarian? What's that got to do with it? I mean, for devotees, if you're a Buddhist and you're not following, it's like saying, oh, I'm a Christian. Great. Do you like Jesus Christ? Who's he? It's like, oh, okay, you're really tuned in. Okay, great. So do you have a question here?
Yes, it was very nice to hear the lecture because it will help me to speak, to preach, to
Yes.
explain to.
Yes.
Actually, Bhagavad-Gita has nothing to do with any culture.
Right. It's Sanatan Dharma. It's talking to the eternal nature of the soul. right?
Science, actually, it's a science.
Science. Something that I should probably share with everybody is that, although I'm just realizing now I haven't put it on YouTube, but I produced let me think about this for a minute, about a 75 PowerPoint slide presentation called Wisdom of the Wise. And that man I was talking about, I think his name was Jones, the polyglot I was talking about, he's one of the contributions on that. I put this together for people just like your brother. And what it is, it's a 75 slides using PowerPoint. It's animated, so it's actually a little entertaining. You know, if you're willing to sit there and watch it, each slide maybe takes about a minute before you read through it. And I try to make it so it engages you a little bit. And it's all a whole collection of scientists, physicists, linguists, Nobel Prize winners, and some of our own acharyas, of course, you know, some of our great teachers. And it's all the wonderful quotes that the people in the highest fields of knowledge have come to. For example, one very highly respected mathematician, they say, is one of the most recognized historians of math. You know, people that actually do history on the history of math in the Western world. And he said, you know, so the quote from him is that we have everything to thank, you know, everybody thinks Pythagoras, I think it is, and the Greeks were in. No. If you actually keep studying, and in the Western world, we're taught that the Arabs came up with the number 0, right? And actually recently I was at some church, I think some minister said that, and I said, nope, wrong. As you actually do the history, this mathematician said that it all goes back to India's Sanskrit literature. And that's another whole knowledge, the whole body of knowledge is mathematics. There's some devotees working on that right now where there's all these little, I don't know how to say it, but little ways of, you know, some of us know the ones about 9 if you write it down a certain way and you do I don't know how they work, but you can do mathematics very quickly. There's a whole part of the literatures, Vedic literatures, that gives all these little tricky little things in order to do very sophisticated mathematics. It's a whole science that's lost. So anyhow, I put together this PowerPoint slideshow. It's called Wisdom of the Wise, and it just clips along and it shows all these quotes. Many of the devotees are from Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Mahatma Gandhi, even people like H.G. Wells, who was a very famous science fiction writer. You know, some of these people I never, you know, Mark Twain. I wouldn't expect the people in India to know these names, but in the Western world, these are tremendously, you know, E.E. Cummings was a poet. All these people that raised the top of their level, and E.E. Cummings took lines right out of the Bhagavad-Gita. You know, and then there's this polyglot. He said, you know, look at the languages, Sanskrit's out. So I put it together for people just like your brother who are just, well, why should I accept this book? Well, here's the reason why. Because all the smartest people in the world are saying there's something here to be respected. That's why. If you don't want to listen to me, and you don't want to listen to them, well, then good luck. Who are you going to listen to? I mean, you got to listen to somebody. Because some people don't. So people just are so assured of who they are. Anybody else want to say something quickly?
Wisdom of the Wise.
It's called Wisdom of the Wise. It's actually a verse in the Bhagavad-Gita that says, Wisdom of the Wise. He says, of those who are, Krishna says, I don't know if I can memorize it so well, of those, of law and order, I am chastisement, right? And of those who seek victory, I am morality. Right? There's that verse. And then he says, and of those who are wise, I am wisdom. And there's, oh no, and of secret things, I am silence. I mean, this is very, it's poetic, but it's like it's true. You want to keep a secret? Keep your mouth shut. Be silent. Go ahead.
The secret, that's a good segue. Have you heard of that New Age teaching, The Secret?
Yes. And I can...
So it's all about, you know, manifesting your vision for your life, you know.
You want me to comment on that?
What's that?
I know, I'm very familiar with it. Would you like me to address it?
Well, just a comment I have on it is that this is so popular in America. So it's part of this New Age movement.
Mm-hmm.
People,
mm-hmm.
they actually they put their vision up on a
I'm
board.
very familiar with it.
Brothers. So they're encouraged to do all that. But one thing that I have, I guess, that when I learned about that philosophy, and then I learned about Bhagavad-Gita was, well, okay, all these people are interested in manifesting something. That's the key word, manifest. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so powerful, or you know, I'm going to use my mind or my consciousness. I'm going to manifest a new car. I'm going to manifest
Mm-hmm.
my dream job. I'm going to manifest my soulmate, right? Well, what I say is, what about manifesting your soul? What, you know, and for me, that's actually what's interesting about the Bhagavad Gita and this Vedic literature and Krishna consciousness. It's the only philosophy that I've ever found that if you're really serious and you think about, well, how can I actually manifest my soul? What is my soul?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like you, if you could, respond to that. If somebody were to ask you, like I am asking you,
Mm-hmm.
how would one manifest their soul, and what would that look like as far as the Krishna consciousness movement goes?
Okay, let me just address the first thing, which is he's talking about actually it was a video that came out probably about 10 years ago in America. It was called The Secret, and it was put together by a bunch of New Age people. And New Age basically means a bunch of people think they're being religious when they're just acting like a bunch of fools. That's kind of what it gets down to. You know, they prop up all sorts of stuff, and they take a little from this and a little from that. And yes, who's that saying? Matitat, patitat or something? You know, huh? Yatamata tatapata. Prabhupada used to refer to it as, yeah, worship everything, worship nothing. It's all just one big hodgepodge. Okay, so this is kind of the New Age. They take a little from this. Say, oh, I like that verse. I'll take that. Oh, I don't like that, so I won't take that. But I'll take that from over here. And then they construct this whole concept. And this concept of the secret was what's referred to as the law of prosperity. That if you believe something is strong enough, and you just focus on it, and you put the little picture on your wall, and you just go, energy, I want that house, that girl, that car, whatever, that job, and I just indulge myself in this 24/7, it will just magically appear, because I'm so sincere. It's the same way they sell a lot of, what do you call it, lottery tickets. God, I'm such a good person, I'm going to buy this lottery ticket, and you're going to make me win, right? You're going to make me win. So this is people manipulating the false ego in a very, very effective way, and it's all a form of cheating. But I'll simply respond by saying this. Krishna really slams it home. Again, Bhagavad-Gita provides all the answers if you're looking for it. And I think it's in, I'm not sure what chapter it is, but he says, there are 5 causes to every action. And if you know what those causes are, you can take that secret and throw it in the fire and burn it, because it is useless. It's another concocted thing to get you to buy another issue of The Secret, or go to this person, they're going to tell you how you can practice the secret. And actually, this is an example of people who take this up. It's very dangerous. We have actually met, I should say, I've actually met people who try these things, and then when it doesn't work, they go back. And they go, but, and actually I have to say also, to a certain extent, this is a problem in Christianity too. There's a bunch of evangelical Christians that say, if you go to God, you bring your grandmother down here, she's in a wheelchair, she has a heart problem, and we'll heal her, and she'll get up out of the chair and she'll dance. Kind of like Krishnadas Babaji did when he saw in Mayapur, right? She'll just get up and be immediately healed. But it doesn't happen. It's all concocted. Okay, and then when it doesn't happen, and when the people who practice The Secret, when it doesn't happen, they're really distressed.
And they don't want to know ever about God.
That's one of the big consequences, and they go, God's cheated me. Well, they don't even have a concept that energy has cheated me. I don't even believe in that anymore. Okay, or more problematic is they go, and of course the people who teach this are very very mischievous people, and they'll say, you didn't do it right. You have to do it this way. Oh, really? Oh, okay. And they go home and they try it and they go through episode 2. And then eventually they go, eventually Super Soul says, hello, maybe this secret is a big lie. And if you know Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says there's 5 causes to every action. What are they? The person, the place, the senses, the endeavor. 5 causes, right? Let's just go through them. The person, who you are, your nature, right? Person, the place. If you're trying to build a igloo in Florida, it's probably not going to work real well. Okay. Person, the place, the endeavor. I mean, there's some people who are so spiritually lazy, they say, oh God, I love you. Could you just like send me some money in the mail? I mean, I love you, but what kind of an endeavor is that? Right? The person, the place, the endeavor, and then the senses. Unfortunately, some people are born with defective senses, right? They don't have good eyes or they don't have good ears, or they may be crippled in some way. It's unfortunate. But so if your senses, if you're going to, I understand, who was it? Beethoven was one of the greatest musicians, right? Of course, he had the ability to hear when he's younger, but they say when he created some of his most amazing concertos and symphonies, he'd gone deaf. So that's an extraordinary situation, but apparently he still had the sense, he could hear it in his head, and he wrote it down. But if you're going to be a great composer and you're deaf, you're probably going to have a problem there under most circumstances, okay? So the person, the place, the endeavor, and the senses, okay? And you actually have control over those 4. Maybe not in this life. Maybe if you have a hearing defect or a seeing defect, you might not have, but you might be able to get another body where that will be corrected. But what it says is, Krishna says, but ultimately the final factor in everything is the super soul. And that's where Krishna says, I got the final say. Right? I have the final say. And the example I always give, which is a powerful example, is the United States, what is it called, NASA, the great, putting all these rockets up into air. And they created, there's actually several examples. The Hubble telescope, I talk about that all the time. They had the most extraordinary engineers and scientists. They had almost an unlimited budget. I mean, it was a limited budget, but whenever they'd spend too much, they'd just say, okay, go give them some more money. We got to get the project done, right? So they really had no limitations of money. They had some of the greatest brains, and they had the greatest tools and resources. And I can go into a whole dissertation of the engineering that goes into that, but it's not relevant. But the point is, who could have a better team of people? And they shot this thing up into the air, and when it got into orbit, it didn't work. And it took another 1.5 years, and everybody was embarrassed. What happened? And some guy down in some corner was, I think he was using metric numbers, and he should have been using, the English system. And they went, oh, you're nut. You just cost us a couple more $1 trillion because now we got to send another missile up there to fix the mirror to get it to work. And they eventually got it working, and it's an extraordinary piece of equipment. But there's an example. Everybody was so rah, 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 rah. And Krishna says, nope, you guys are a little too proud. We're going to kick you in the head here. And it was a big embarrassment all over the newspapers and what happened. And of course the American people are saying, we got people starving also. We got all these social welfare things. And we're giving all this money to put these missiles up in the air. Prabhupada said, what is the use of all this nonsense? Right? He's again, it's just a waste of money. Okay, we don't need to put missiles in the air to find out what's written in Bhagavad Gita. It's right here. Okay, so in regards to manifesting one's soul, it's really doing exactly what you're doing. You're coming to our holy centers. I know you've been to Mayapur, and now you're here, and you're obviously coming to these classes, and you're obviously very seriously listening. You've been to every one of the lectures I've given, at least. And continue to read Bhagavad Gita. I always advise people, because there are places in Bhagavad Gita that can be a little bit challenging. Some things are not so easy to grasp the first time around. I could go into some of mine, but I don't want to drag it out. So I say to people, if there's some things that are not quite so clear, just go with the things that really ring true and sink your teeth into that. Stay in association with devotees. Try to find a service, which we've talked about that. Do it sincerely, and Krishna will manifest it. Your soul will become fully illuminated. You know, you will actually become aware of what your role is, what your dharma is in this life right now. And we all have one. We all have something that we can contribute. And sometimes it takes a while, but keep on doing different things within the Krishna conscious parameters. Meet more devotees and study more. And you'll find something will open up and you'll go, ah, it comes naturally. You'll find the thing that comes naturally for you. And your soul will literally bloom, blossom. There's a verse in the Gita that goes, established thus, one never departs from the truth. And after gaining this, he thinks there's no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulties. Whoa. That's kind of cool. Right? That's where you can go. That's where you can get. Okay, so I think we're like way over time here. Thank you all very much for putting up with my frog voice. And all glories to Srila Prabhupada, ki jai.